Hello, taco tacticianers. On today's episode, we're covering airbrushes. Had a few questions throughout the months about what we use around here on airbrushes and our preferences and what have you. So, the good guys, Lance and actually Jeremy over at Lead Pouring Techniques and Jig Making on Facebook, need to go check out that group if you're into pouring your own jigs or spinner baits, any kind of lead techniques, making your own. Hey, it's a good place to go. Check them out on Facebook. Today we're going to cover the first one on the board is the most easiest to use on airbrushes. It's just single action. When they say single action, you basically just depress the trigger on the airbrush and it allows the air and the paint to flow at the same time. Whereas these two are dual action, and the way they operate is once you push the trigger down, just in that right position there, only air comes out. It only produces any kind of a flow of paint is when you pull that little trigger back. And the greater you pull it back, the more fluid or paint will flow. So on this little pache, or pash, what they call it, it's a single action. It's really commonly used in the taxidermy field because there's not real fine detail that we're getting into, such as on lures makings, because we're doing smaller scales. But now a lot of them will use the dual purpose in order to get that fine detail on some of their taxidermists, fish and around the eyes, what have you. But this one is very simple because the way you adjust the airflow, or excuse me, the paint flow, is by turning this little cone, and the further it goes down, the less paint will flow out once you depress the trigger. As you're depressing the trigger, you can increase by taking the cone and forcing it out, or threading it. It's threaded. So as it goes out, it forces more paint to flow. So you can use this as a wide band for covering for like bigger spaces, or even I use it for priming basically on a lot of my lures. It's a little bit easier. It throws out a big fan cast, but you can actually control it fairly good with this. Now this accepts the cup that you have in place. If I can get it out of here. I hadn't used it in a while, as you can tell. You've got a little cup that you can fill up with your paint, slide it in, or you can use the jars that actually just mount underneath. And when you're doing larger runs, such as if you've got a long run of jigs or even crankbaits, what have you, that you are actually needing a lot of paint. Well, that comes in handy. They've got the plastic, and they also have the metal tip that slides in. So, a lot of people will use these because they can control with that jar, and they've got two hands to steady. Not bad. It's not great, but it actually works. It's functioning. Very simple design. In order to clean this, there's a little Allen screw here. You pull that out, and then this will actually pull out with a needle in it, and then the cone unscrews and comes off, and then you can clean inside there. Fairly simple, not much to it. Don't know if I can get the back end off, but there's nothing really to the design. And it's fairly simple. It's lightweight, well, actually very simple. It's lightweight, not a lot of whole moving parts, what have you. Some guys take off the back just so it'll fit better in their hand. But to be honest with you, I kind of like that arm on the back end of it to use as a rest. So when I hit the gun, or if I'm back here like this and use my fingertip. Now, my personal favorite, by no means, just to let you know, I am not sponsored or a partnered with or a paid employee, what have you, of any of our companies that I list on our board or that we actually support. They've given us good customer service. We've become friends over the years, and I like to support somebody that actually supports me as far as giving me the customer service that I need and putting out a quality fine product. Now, my favorite airbrush, and I've had this thing for a long time. I've had it for over 20 years sitting in a closet, and just pulled it out 2 years ago. Started to learn, teach myself how to do it, and watch the YouTube videos such as this to get an idea of what airbrush or how to do everything, what have you. And I sat down, and within the first 30 minutes of painting my first crankbait. It's not the greatest in the world, but it was a learning experience. And I used the cheap craft paints at Walmart, the little apple barrel. Just thinned them down and used them. And they worked out pretty good for the first one. Am I proud? It's okay. It turned out pretty good for the first time. But that was a learning experience. And such as these dual actions, these are definitely a learning experience. It's going to take you a little time to get used to it. That flow control, that finger pressure, that's something that even guys have been shooting for or painting for 25, 30 years. They'll tell you it's fairly difficult at times until you get that hang of it. The reason why I like this one, I bought it years ago for something totally different, not even to try to airbrush small miniature items in the arts field. And it was actually to paint door jambs in cars if I ever decided to paint a car. I just got a fairly decent deal. I liked the looks of it, and it felt really good in my hand. Well, on this one here, this is the Badger Universal 360 is what they call it, or just the 360. And it has a couple of different unique features that I like about it. One, it does have, the one drawback, it does have a smaller cup to it compared to like this Awada. This one here can hold a lot of paint, and I can do a lot of lures with that without having to change up and constantly mix up more paint to pour. To spray. But on this one here, it's got the smaller cup. I use it for mainly my detail, but to be honest with you, I use it for just about everything anymore. The smaller cup is kind of like a hindrance to a degree. What I do like about it is I can see a lot easier over top of it compared to a larger cup. You can tell the difference. I don't know if you can see the difference or not, but when I'm spraying it, small, fine print on these lures, the detail, that kind of cup gets in the way. So, it's maybe just me, but I'm looking down the barrel just kind of like I want to look down a gun or a rifle to sight in. It might be a hindrance to me, but it might be fine and dandy for someone else. But I just kind of seem to like the shorter. Now, you can actually do an update, basically. If you want, you can get a chair foot protector, one of those little rubber protectors. You can cut the bottom off of it, and it slides right over top of that, so you can extend that whatever you want, so you can hold a lot more paint. The other nice feature about this is not only is it a siphon feed, a gravity feed, where the paint just actually comes and flows in, and as you pull the trigger back, it mixes with air and shoots out. This one will convert real easy by just spinning it around, and you can use a jar. So you can use it to do and produce larger work spaces. So if I'm doing multiple jigs, a couple hundreds at a time with one color, I can go in there, I can fill that up, and I can shoot it. And it's basically the same as using this one, because I can attach that jar or on this one here, the little small cup, and produce a lot of paint and cover a lot of area or a lot of lures all at once. Now, also too, another feature I do like about the Badger, of course, with that twisting on that 360. Now they've got nicer ones than this one. This was kind of a in between model, I guess you can say. They're not all in betweens, to be honest with you, on Badger. Badger puts out a really great product, and they're made here in the United States. Give a big shout out to Ken Sheffield over at Badger, because their customer service is unreal. They're very friendly. Ken's on Facebook continuously. He answers his emails. Might take him a little time, but down-to-earth person. And when I was wanting to upgrade my needle, which that is this part here inside the airbrush, I was trying to find a superfine, which on that the tip itself is very, very pointed. And of course, you got to be careful with these things when you're pulling them in and out, because you can damage that needle. And I'll discuss that and how to correct that in a future video. But that's one of the features I do like about this. And of course, going back to the help that Ken provided me years ago, is they sell different needle sizes. And when they ship them in a little plastic tube. They got the protector. But you notice that's a black ball. This is a chrome ball. Each one are color coded. So when you go to replace or just to change out, because I want to go from a super fine to a medium, so I can cover a lot quicker areas or larger patterns like this one, then, you know, I can change out that needle. Now, this one does do a pretty good size pattern, but it also gives me that real fine detail. Now, the other feature I do like about this, compared to a lot of the others, as you just saw, I can unscrew the lock and pull the needle out. If I start getting clogs, the paint starts drying or whatever, I can take it and reseat it. But actually, I can also pull it out a little at a time to increase that flow. So I get a bigger flow of paint coming out of the gun. And of course, the proper way to seat them is wait until it goes down to the end and you just barely touch it to where it goes into the needle valve itself. And you don't have to force it, just barely where it seats, then lock it in place, and then boom, you're good to go. Now, also another feature is one you can see through, you can feel right there, you can get to the knob real easy to unlock it, and you can actually extract the needle very quickly and very easily in case you need to clean off and put it back in. And of course, the back section does come off, so you can actually get into your spring and all mechanism and pull your trigger out and even your valve under here. So they're very simple but very good quality. I mean, I've had this thing for a while, but just only started using it, and it's become my favorite. Not because it was my first, but it's the features. I love the features on it, and the availability of different parts and needles. You can actually just hit Ken up on Facebook, or email them, or call Badger USA, and they will fix you right up, and the parts are very economical. Now, we're going to get into the most commonly used in the lure trade is the Awada Eclipse. This is the HPCS. I may have mistyped on response on from Jeremy or Lance on Facebook, but can't remember the numbers. It is a fantastic airbrush. It feels good in your hand. You have one, I've got the needle inside here, and you can lock it down and unlock it, fairly simple. And of course, the control mechanisms and all is great. Now, this has been sitting for a while, so I haven't used it, so I need to clean it back out again. Now, it's a little more difficult to get to, your valve. You got to use a special wrench to get that valve out. And replacement parts are available, but as you see, these are made in Japan, so they're made overseas. So if there's any kind of shipping problems like we've seen just here recently, it might take you several months to get any parts. That's one thing I do say about Ken at Badger. They make them right there on the spot. They also make a great line of primers and paints and everything to go along with it. And they carry different fittings to help you hook up to your compressors or whatever. And then, of course, with the change of the head, you can change out the needle. And a lot of times the spray cap, some of the guys, they take that off and it exposes that needle. So you got to be careful, because if that needle's exposed, one, you could poke yourself and give yourself an instant tattoo. Or when you're sitting it back into your stand, if you've got a stand per se like this one, when you go to slide it inside there, you got to be careful, because you might come at an angle and you might bend that tip, or the convenience of having it on top. That's the only drawback on this one, is when you go put it in, well, you got to kind of slap it down over this way. You can't leave the cup on it. I mean, you can, but it's bulky, and then you knock it in out of the way. And of course, I like the protection of around the airbrush itself, so when they slide in. So the back end section is easily removed, but now, not like the Badger, I can't unlock the needle and I can't pull it directly out. So I have to unscrew the back every time, and I can pull the needle out. And I can make the adjustments and what have you, but I've got to take the back off. Now, a lot of artists, they'll just leave the back off and they'll spray that way. I don't know. It's not my funnest. It's okay, but it creates more of balance forward instead of completely balanced gun. So, and it actually fits. I mean, it's a comfortable. If I can get it back together now, put the needle in. It fits, comfortable in your hand. There we go. But for some reason, that features of this Badger, I really like it. It's a little bit lighter weight. It's a little bit smaller in diameter. So even though I've got bigger hands, it fits pretty well. I kind of like it. Now, they came out with a Soltar 2020 a couple years ago, maybe I think 2 years ago now, in 2020. And I really, really, really like to have that because I really want to try it because it has a little bit larger cup, but the workmanship in it is fantastic. And it's got, like I call it a thumb guard or whatever, this little thumb rest that goes in between the air source and the gun itself to give you a little bit more stability for when your thumb rides in, or it depends on how you hold it. So Ken, if you're watching this, hint, hint, I'm not sponsored, but I do love the products. So with that, I guess we're going to conclude that the way these airbrushes are, depending on your style of painting, what you want to do, how you want to use it, and the volume you're using. They're all great for using for different volumes. The only problem is, while Iwata, you're limited if you're doing a large production run, and if you've got a couple hundred or a couple thousand jigs or spinnerbaits or crankbaits to do. Well, it's a lot easier to fill up one of these little jars. You can get a lot painted with that little jar, a lot. And switching out, cleaning up. The jars are fairly simple to clean out. Don't take a whole lot. It's not a rocket science. That's the only limitation I see on the Iwata. Which now, if you've got larger runs, and I mean large runs, or doing a lot of clear coat, if you're spraying the BCS or Tamco or what have you instead of doing a epoxy, then you get into the bigger stuff, which is, this is actually a mini, so it's not really big in automotive, to be honest with you, but that hopper fills up and it holds a lot of paint. Next time, we're going to cover over a few other items with airbrushing and maybe maintenance, cleaning, the simplest things, and how to get started and what you need to get started with. Hey, once again, thank you for tuning in. Give some love to Pache, to Iwata, and especially my friend Ken over at Badger Air Products, or Airbrush. They are fantastic. And also, to support some of our local friends here, or even our friends that throughout the United States. We've got Papa E's pork toads. Man, they're actually a fantastic product. They replace the soft plastic jig trailers, what have you. They go back to, well, what we used to use back, years ago until they were discontinued. And Papa E's makes them handmade. They're here in Kentucky. Of course, Badger Air Products, Airbrush Products, Gambler Bass Boats, Get the Net Fishing. It has a heck of a bunch of reels, and they do all kinds of things. Sugar Tits Custom Lures. They are suppliers of crankbait bodies. Easy Fish Hooks. They're out of Louisville, Kentucky. It is a fantastic hook design, and I think his name is Hensey. Check them out. I believe it's easyfishhooks.com. We've got a video in our library here if you want to go back and take a look and see how and what the fish hook is all about. Of course, our friends over at Spray Gunner, we'd like to thank Wendy. She's done an excellent job on getting our parts and supplies to us. Fishingskirts.com, of course, they make great skirts. And of course, Crappie Monster. Don't forget about Crappie Monster. If you want to get into a guide service of crappie fishing, check out our friend Jeremy Mattingly over at Crappie Monster. I believe he's out of Tennessee now, Real Foot Lake, but he fishes all over, and he's taking clients daily. So, well, here again, thank you again. Once we get things calmed down a little bit around here, we're doing some other projects. And we're going to get back into lure painting here pretty soon and hopefully pop out some more videos. Thanks again, and make sure tap that subscribe and that and share this video if you don't mind. Throw it up on Facebook page, even on the lead pouring products or whatever Facebook page. Hats off to lead pouring techniques and jig making. And give a shout out to Jeremy and Lance for giving me these comments and asking. And of course, got quite a few asked about it too. So once again, thank you and have a fantastic day. And remember, take a kid fishing.